Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. This one a special edition because it is one of my favorite days of the year that comes around 4 or 5 times depending. And that is Financials Day. Now, for some people, this is boring, this is meaningless, this is nothing. That's fair enough. I understand. I know, given the state of where we are in terms of playing and winning and points and things like that, people go, wow, we saved money. What a trophy for United. But again, there are multiple different things you can think at the same time. One of the jobs, of course, that Ineos had when they came in was to fix the finances at Manchester United. United were in a hole, a deep, dark hole that had lost somewhere in the range of 3-4, I think it was 500 million over 3 years. The COVID credits, the COVID write-offs were leaving. The COVID write-offs were departing. The COVID write-offs were disappearing, and United were about to be in serious trouble, heavily limited by PSR. And the fact remains that despite everything else going on, I think most people would agree that we're buying good players. We are turning over the squad well. And in the grand scheme of it, there are good things there. I think that's a big part of why there's even more anger or impatience over the present results. I think most people would agree. The squad, while it isn't finished, is better. And we have removed a lot of high earners, wasteful players, things like that, and brought in a lot of very, very quality players on decent deals. Good, young, high potential players, good proven players, Cunha and Mbeumo, etc., and the rest. And so I imagine that is obviously, I'm sure that is a part of the impatience when the results are coming up to match. And the feeling is, well, if you change managers, then you'll immediately start getting better results because we have a better squad. Fair enough. I understand that opinion. And I do agree that we do have a better squad and that the turnover has been there. And that is only possible through recognition of and assessing, correcting, and fixing of the financials. So the fourth quarter financials for 2024-2025 came out today. Now, you have to bear in mind this runs up through July 1st, up through June 30th, rather. As remember, football finance goes through the kind of the midsummer months. And it doesn't include what happened after that, which is really interesting. I mean, we're going to get to that because you might look at the back half of summer and say, well, we spent a lot of money. We did. We also gained a lot of money. And I have the numbers to talk about that as well. So this is a really, really interesting, this is a really, really interesting point. And part of the reason for going over this and why it's meaningful is to understand what we can and can't do. Remember, at the end of summer, I told you, based on my information, that we would be active in the January market. Now, yesterday, I discussed the 3 main targets and things like that. And there is a reality that Manchester United have the ability, for the first time in a long time, to head into that January market and spend some money. Spend some serious money if need be. They want a midfielder, they want a defender, and they want a wingback as well. At maybe multiple in some of these positions over the long run, but they want all of these positions, and they are a priority. That is the case. So let's take a look, because the financials themselves are incredibly impressive. And not only does this allow us, ideally, to work better in the market, spend more, and start catching up to some of these teams in terms of the squad, in terms of turning it over, in terms of getting there, even despite our poor results finishing outside of Europe last season, but it also means that United can have the strong financials to ideally move forward with other projects, like the stadium project and things like that, where they can get loans, where they can get sponsorships, where they can get partnerships, and have the financial backing to say, look, we're still a very big, strong club. We're not bleeding money every year anymore, and we can raise funds towards this, and ideally as well, that's where we'll see owner investment and things like that. Balancing and fixing the financials was a huge part of the preparation for something like the stadium overhaul, the rejuvenation project, all these things that need to move forward, because you can't be losing hundreds of millions per year and doing that. So let's dive right into the numbers. So this is it. This is the first the fourth quarter and full year fiscal 2025 results. I'm going to read through some of the lines and then explain them. So obviously, men's team finished 15th, women's team finished 3rd in the Super League, reached the final of the FA Cup, achieved fourth quarter total revenues of 164, which contributed to record revenues of 666.5 million. They a lot of this is explained later, so I'll explain it a bit more beyond. We had the preseason tour. A good chunk of the funds, we had those. A good chunk of those funds, frankly, came in the final year, in this year, not in last year as well. But we also had that post-season tour, which contributed to some money there. We spent the $50 million on Carrington. New partnerships with Coca-Cola, Soken, and Parimatch. So this was a Coca-Cola, a finance thing, and some sort of other thing. And we've renewed our partnership with Stat Sports and Sports Breaks. Then it talks about the signings and things like that. And again, even though these came in a different fiscal year, oftentimes they're just talked about because it came in at the end of this report comes out after summer. The club implemented a transformation plan put in place to enhance operational efficiency. The benefit of this is expected to be seen across our revenue and cost base in fiscal 2026. So the transformation plan has a lot to do with staff cuts and things like that as well. And that is actually going to take more effect next year. I'll talk about that in a minute. For the full fiscal year 2026, this is next year, they're expecting 640 to 660 million. Now, we had 666 last million, so they're expecting to have a little bit lower, which makes sense. Omar Barada says, as we settle into the 25-26 season, working hard to improve the club on all areas. We're pleased with the additions to the squads. Off the field, we are emerging from a period of structural and leadership change with a fresh, streamlined organization equipped to deliver on our sporting and commercial objectives. So again, I talked about in summer how essentially we finished the massive overhaul and it's finally settled. Obviously, we need to see, we want to see results on the pitch from that, but that is important. We're investing in infrastructure. Planning continues to meet our ambition of developing a new stadium. I want to say again that per my information, they were meeting with at least 3 construction companies in the last few weeks to talk about this and to work out who would be doing it, get bids and things like that even as well. To have generated record revenues is challenging, et cetera, et cetera. As we start to feel the benefits of our cost reduction program, there's a significant potential for improved financial performance, which will in turn support our overriding priority success on the pitch. So point of that line, yes, some of it's PR speak, things like that. That's what a CEO does. But an important part of this is things like when we save money, where does it go, right? That's kind of more the salient point here and the part that matters. When we're saving money, it is being reinvested. Not a cent outside of paying for the debt, I understand. Not a cent is being paid out to owners and things like that for additional dividends and such. Nobody's pulling money back out. These cost savings are not to line Jim Ratcliffe's pocket. Okay? So there you have kind of that aspect of it, which I think is important. Let's move down, and I want to go through a few different things. So commercial revenue was up by 30-something million. Broadcast revenue was actually down because, of course, in the prior season, we were in the Champions League, I want to say, and we got bounced. No. Yes, of course. Yes, we were in the Champions League. We got bounced, but even Champions League group stage is worth a lot of money. And then we moved on to other things as well. Why do I think we weren't in the Champions League? We must have been, because in Ten Hag's first season, we finished very high up the table, and we were in the Champions League in his second season. We must have been, right? Yeah, the second season is when we had Champions League disaster, because the first season we were in the Europa League. That's right. Because that was the Onana costing us up. So yeah, match day revenue, we made it far in the Europa League, so we had more games, so more match day revenue. So total revenue was up a little bit. Operating loss was way down. Now, even though the revenues were up just a little, operating losses were way down. This is the cuts, and we'll get to that in a second. The loss for the period was 33 million. That's it, compared to 113 million the year prior. So massive, massive reduction in losses at the club. And here we go into explaining a lot of it so you can see what we're doing. So sponsorship revenue was up a bit, mostly due to Qualcomm. The other sponsors really will be taking mostly effect during this season. We'll see the increased revenue from Coca-Cola, etc. this year. Maybe not significant, maybe another 10 million there. So that should be up a little bit. Retailing, merchandising, apparel, and product licensing was up 20 million, primarily due to the launch of their new e-commerce model in partnership with Scale. So this is where they brought the e-commerce model in-house. We kind of talked about in some previous quarters. They made some more money. Then there was sponsorship revenue in the quarter, 9 million because of the postseason tour in Malaysia and Hong Kong. And again, the thing with Scale. Now, broadcasting was down because they were in the Europa League rather than the Champions League in the prior year. Broadcasting for it was, that's why that one. Match day was up because we had 5 more home matches because of the Europa League. Basically, that's it, right? We got through those extra rounds of the Europa League. We had 5 more home matches. That's the reason. Operating expenses were down 35 million. Now, employee benefits were down 52 million last year, and this is primarily due to some lowered wages from Europa League versus Champions League. Not as much as some people believe it to be. This was about half of that. The impact of changes made to the first playing squad, we did dump some wages in January and reduce non-playing staff costs as a result of the club's restructuring process. Now, the thing to note here is that in the overall, they moved out 400 jobs. Last year, they only moved out half of those, and not all of them were gone all year. This year, 25 to 26, you will have an additional 200 staff jobs that were cut in savings, which again, financially means that this employee benefit expense, not even considering how much we shed in wages by selling players, loans, and things like that, is going to likely go down another 30 to 40 million. So when we look at it overall, our match day revenue is going to be lower again by about 20 million. Our broadcasting is going to be lower again, about 30 to 40 million. So that's going to cost us, right? And just think with the numbers here, that's going to cost us about 50 million, maybe 60 million in lost revenues there. But our sponsorships are probably going to be up another 15 to 20. So that's about 40 there. Then we have more of the costs that are coming out. Really, we're only going to be down about maybe nothing. That might all catch it up, and we might be down 10 million or something compared to last year with these other expenses, and that's without Europe, and that's without all of that, okay? So when I was saying at the end of summer, if we can get back to Europe and qualify with the cuts that we've made, not only will United be financially viable, but they're very likely to be profitable. Profitable means that money's going back into the club, okay? They probably won't run much of a profit. You don't really want to. The idea, though, is if they have a plus 40, that just means they can go spend another 150 million on transfers or 100 million on transfers in addition to add on to that from what they would usually be spending. So we want to be profitable. And then there's a few things like this. And that's also including 36 million in exceptional items last year, if you think about it, where we had to dispose of, we sacked Ten Hag and some other stuff like that. If we don't sack a manager this year, which isn't a guarantee, we'll also reduce that. So again, you're probably looking at a loss of 60 million in revenue this year because of the loss of Europe, but a gain of another 25 in expenses, another 30 in expenses, and another 20 in sponsorship revenue. So you're looking at total, we're probably already plus 10 to 15 this year going into the next one. Now there's this, and this is one I want to mention because last year when we looked at some of the numbers, there's this huge, massive, unbelievable panic which said our net finance cost, this is the debt, right? This is the cost of servicing the debt. It was 61 million in 2023 to 24, the prior year. And people were going, look, the Glazers are costing us 61 million a year. But I broke that all down and I said at that time, look, yes, the debt sucks. We shouldn't have to pay for it. We shouldn't have to deal with it. That's annoying. It's sitting there. It's crap. But it's not 61 million per year. The only reason it was 61 million in that year is because of swings in the exchange rates. You understand? There's a way that this works where you have unhedged borrowings, and that just essentially means it's not invested elsewhere. So when the exchange rate goes one way, the expense is really high because it makes the pound weaker to the dollar, things like that, and how it costs. And you end up having a higher cost. It swung the other way this time, and now our net finance costs were only 21 million. Okay, so we're not doing 60 million a year out the door to the debt. This is still debt that shouldn't exist, but it is at a more manageable level, and all of that. And then they did some hedges and things like that to make it more sustainable in the future. Point being, without getting too deep into it, the debt isn't costing us that much money. It is not crippling us anymore, and it is certainly something that, while we all want it gone and to deal with, it's not going to screw the club up, and it is not the reason we had to sack all these staff and to make all these changes. That 20 million is tiny in comparison to a lot of what was done in terms of increasing revenues, savings on wages, savings on players, savings on staff, increased sponsorships, all of these kind of things. It maybe makes up 10% of what we needed to do. That's just the truth. It's not downplaying the impact of the Glazers and things like that, to look at things from an honest perspective, and that is the truth of it. The damage that they've done, and it's still a lot because it's 20 million and it's 20 years, so it's hundreds of million that they've taken out of the club for that debt, and that's unacceptable. And obviously it'd be a lot better if United had that, but it isn't crippling them at this point in time. Cash flows, things like that, fine. Some of the revolving facility was higher. Ineos put more money in for shares at last Christmas or something, I believe. The non-current borrowings are different, but we've borrowed a bit more money this year. Let me see if there was something else I wanted to look at. So yeah, that's it. 33 million loss for the period. So you can see that our operating expenses are way down. They're likely to drop another 50 to 60 to 70 million even further. And again, remember, this is what I was saying. Finance costs versus finance income. The finance costs were high, but you get these swings, and you can see it, how that works. You get these swings where the net cost is not actually that bad. We shouldn't see it be this bad ever again, where it's this huge of a cost. It should be more like this. And still, it's 21 million we shouldn't have, because otherwise we'd be at about 11. Regardless, in terms of operations, we lost 18 million last year. That means the club is almost running to break even, essentially. If we go back to prior years and look, we were at, before net finance costs, minus 11 in 2023, which is almost good, but 87.36. And before that, before COVID, we were actually slightly in the profit land, and things were much more balanced and manageable. So what does this all mean at this point in time? Essentially, it means that with the sponsorships gained, with the costs that are done to the staff, to other expenses, to the way that they've managed the finance costs, if we don't have to sack a manager and a ton of staff every single year, because some of those exceptional costs are payoffs for sacking staffs. There's a lot of compensation packages and things like that when staff are let go. If we get through all of that, United are in a position now where they're basically not losing money. Even outside of Europe, United are probably, like, maybe when you add it all up, even slightly positive. So they were minus 33 after the finance costs. You have probably another, like I say, 25 million in savings, 30 million in net finance expenses that you won't have. That's 50. You're gaining another 20, so that's 70, but you're losing probably 60 million in revenue. So you're maybe like at minus 20, okay? But there's more. There is more, okay? And then I'll explain what it actually all means when it comes to how we can go about doing business in the future. I did this chart at the end of summer to talk about, in the end, how much we saved and how much we spent. The fact is that over the course of summer, after July 1, we gained another $50 million in net costs this year. This is between wages saved, okay? Wages saved this fiscal year, amortization saved this fiscal year. The losses are that on those amortizations are accounted for, and what we've added. Okay, between all of it, we added about $70 million in expense for the 2025 to 2026 season. We saved about $117 million. So there's a $50 million gain. So if we take all those numbers we just talked about, because we haven't factored in the player trading and all sorts of stuff as it's going to come into this year, with all the other stuff, we're probably minus 20 for this year. But then you have to add in a $50 million net gain. We went about rebuilding our club this summer, putting it together, fixing it, and ended up gaining $50 million net on the year in terms of our expenses. That should mean United are technically and probably and quite possibly on course for a profitable season. Now, why that matters so much is, of course, you can spend that money, but it's also PSR. We've lost now $29 million, $113 million, and $33. That is a total of $175 over the last 3 years. Remember, the total you can lose is $105. We have about $140 million in write-offs during that time, things that don't count against PSR. That brings us down to a loss of $35. If we end up essentially being profitable this year or near zero, then you take that $29 million loss away, you add a zero here, United are even. This means, of course, that they have the ability to invest heavily into the club. And remember, there will be more departures next summer. Casemiro, some big wages and things like that come off. So at this point in time, what it tells us is, from the ownership perspective of job number one, fix the financials, solve United being capped by PSR, solve United being constantly limited and having to do all sorts of crazy shit just to spend their money in the market, solve United having to, even though we've been able to spend money, we still have been more limited than other clubs in recent years, and we shouldn't because we are such a massive club. Solve those problems and get United into a stable financial position where it is not constantly affecting everything, where you don't go into January and say, we can barely spend any money. We know we need to prioritize winning games. We know we need to get a player on here and we have the chance. How many times have we gone and said, look, if we could spend good money in January, then that would help us. It would help us in a European thing. It would help us in this. But all we can do is look at the loan market. All we can do is bring in Igalo. All we can do is bring in Sabitzer. All we can do is bring in Dorgu, who's very young. All we can do is that, because even though we probably need more and it could help us this season, because we just can't spend more. These have had massive, I don't have to tell you, these have had massive impacts on our ability to compete on the pitch, spend when is necessary, do what is necessary, and all of that. And it's made the finances more important than they should be. I want to be at a point where we don't have to talk about the financials. We're pretty much there. I think we're there. I think that we're there to where, barring surprises, the next quarters and things that we're looking at, United should be pretty balanced. Where we're going, cool, if we need to spend money, we can spend money. And then it's just on them to go and put the money down at that point in time. And we're not hearing, oh, we're super heavily limited by PSR. It's a thing of the past. We're not concerned about it. That's how it should be. And that's my read on the financials. So I would say job number one there is done. Be able to fix the finances to a point where you're no longer in a constant danger and a constant pressure and a constant limitation, which will allow you to go and focus primarily on football and not sit there and constantly have to figure about PSR in January, PSR in summer. We can, if the opportunity is there to go get the players we need that will help us be better this season, to make a push for Europe or something like that come January, we can do it. And we can go next summer and invest in what we need and buy what we need. And, of course, it presents good financials, which are better for the old stadium project, which I still, again, will say I think have massive implications in the long run for the whole ownership model itself. So, yeah, I get it. Some of this might be boring. I get it. Some of this might be poor. Some of this might be frustrating when you're looking at like, yeah, but we're losing games and all of that. 100% understood. But you do have to bear in mind the fact that we've been bad for so long has not come about by accident. And consistent good actions will result in wins at the end of the day. They have to, right? But it also means like you don't have to sit with your failures. So like example, you say the manager. We don't have to worry about sacking a manager because it's going to cost $12 million and that's going to sink our financials for the season. No, we don't have to. We could change managers if the need arises, and it's not going to ruin us and say, well, now we can't buy players. Sack a manager or buy players. And we're constantly sack a manager or buy players, sack a manager or buy players. We sacked 10 August. We couldn't really buy in January, so then we can't reinforce a squad because they're both, if we have to change managers or staff, we can't do that and then not change the squad as well and fix up the players and buy more players. So, the finances are fixed. The ability to spend the money on the club is essentially there. The ability to invest in the team is there. We've been able to, I personally believe, work towards a much better squad overall that is not done yet, but is getting there. It needs a couple really big pieces in there to finish it off, but improve the overall levels of the squad, get good players, all while reducing those costs. So I think a lot of the top line down things are better and better and better and improving, better facilities, better this. You're ticking all of those boxes. The last thing you would expect is the results on the pitch to come through, okay? This may be why I'm a little more patient than others. To me, it's as above, so below. As it is in heaven, so it is on earth. And it's basically it's the mind, and then what you see in reality always match, but it starts in the mind. And this is how business is seen as well. Generally, what starts at the top is what you see on the pitch. This is something Phil's talked about a long time, which is one of the things I actually really love that he says in all his big rants and things like that. He talks about that, what you see in the mind of a business, what you see in the top, in the executive levels, and as each goes down is what's going to show up on the pitch. So on the pitch, it's chaos, it's uncertainty, it's this and all that. As the top keeps getting sorted, and we're moving down, and each level keeps getting better and better and better and better, on the pitch is actually the last thing you'd expect to sort in that case. Just the truth. But we're there. And that's how I see it from the financial perspective. We are there now. Everything is set. The stage is set. The stability is there. The finance is there. Everything, and the stage is set to say, good. Here forward, everything needs to be going up. Everything needs to be going upward trend. Better results, better performances. Buy what we need to improve the squad in each window. Squad gets better, games get better, results get better, performances get better, and we get all the way to where we need to be, which is competing for titles. And I don't think it needs to be that far away either, because we have the facilities to invest in it to speed that process up. So from my perspective on that front, I think the ownership have done an exceptional job to turn it around that quickly. And I think they have. I just think that they have. I think objectively looking at that, they have fixed so many of the things that they can fix. So Jim, Ineos, they're responsible for appointing people, and those people have to get the job done. And if those people don't get the job done, they have to replace them, right? But what they've been responsible for directly, they've been successful at here at United so far. And I think that in terms of squad building and finance and player turnover and things like that, I would also say that Omar, Wilcox, and such have been successful at so far. But the test comes now and over the next 12 to 24 months. Does what you're doing right now work out? Can you continue to add to and turn over the squad? Can you get it right in the end on the manager, to the right person, to the right strategy, to the right wins, and you get the results on the pitch? Because everything else I think is being done right. This may be the final piece of the puzzle, but it's certainly a big piece of the puzzle, and it still requires a lot of brilliance. So regardless, I don't think we'll be hamstrung by the financials anymore, and I can say that I do think they've done a really good job sorting this out, and getting United out of this insane level of danger. And I at least think we have football people then making the right decisions, making decisions, looking at things in the right way as they should. And hopefully they get it right and we end up winning games moving forward from here. But I'll tell you, this is the way I see it. Without sorting all the rest of this up, we were never going to win a title. By fixing the rest of this, we have the finances, the resources, and everything to have a chance. We had no chance. We were dead. Now we have a chance. And so that's what they need to do now. But on this front, a positive outlook. Again, it's a separate topic too. Yeah, but we have 4 points in 4 games and stuff like that. I get it. It's a separate topic to that. On this front, I think it's very good. It's well set up. And to be fair to you and anybody who feels that way, all it does is reinforce the fact that now we need results. You're right. We do. Because everything else has been done. Now we need results. And now that is the most important thing. And now that should not be hamstrung by what is going on at the club moving forward. Okay? Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you found it interesting. And again, United do have the financials and the ability moving forward to invest in January and other parts to improve upon things as we go ahead through this season and into the summer. Okay? Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next one.